the third live, and I'm just simply doing whatever means I can to get the bandwidth because this device has short bandwidth for videos. So otherwise, the live is as soon as access I have to upload on my own channel. And some in the past I wasn't permitted to make the live based on the parameters of this phone. It didn't have the right format, but it's somehow letting me. So I just wanted to land and complete the minutes that I was making, today in this channel, moving into referencing Black Friday, but I'm also tying that back into the history of European culture in the United States of America, the geographic region, and some of the way that that's functioned, and some of what that's meant to indigenous people, as I can appreciate as a person born here, but also a person of an immigrant, because my mother's side immigrated from Europe in the last 150, nearly almost 175 years now, and my father of maybe the last 50 years or so have been here. But what I was saying is that if you in the last video where I was reaching is that if you imagine like the church, right? Like say the church up to present, but especially back before and at the point of the onset of birth control, the sexual revolution that has changed dynamics in our society, such as to make living accommodations and lifestyles less punitive on the surface, such as having relations out of wedlock and even having children out of wedlock, and that'd be good to go. And I don't see that there had ever been anything wrong with any way that a child will come into this world. But an example is that prior to and up to the sexual revolution, as my mother can remember and also attest because she worked in adoption after that, when some of the ramifications of that were still at play after the sexual revolution, is in the protecting of adopted parents that would give their child to adoption. Their actual information was safeguarded. They were strictly safeguarded because of the social ramifications that could happen in the past. I think that some of those ramifications that could happen to parents who had children out of wedlock, children born out of wedlock, and the families thereof, those actual ramifications and the stigma of that, it neatly and conveniently and exactly transmutes to people of marginal medical mental health diagnosis. I think mental health is about as arbitrary as judging people and dismissing people under religious pretext and ethical pretext, as having families out of wedlock in the past have been, or having relations out of wedlock. But the ramifications are as deadly, and the social approbation is as severe now, and it's at play now. So I think that the sophistication in the modern lifestyles, and some of the actual real ramifications of what sexual activity does to a human body, psyche, and livelihood, it's mitigated, and it's calibrated and checked by the medical establishment, such that the actual control and influence from the state apparatus, which is owned by the church in the first place, according to Tashik Bey, and had never not been the case these many iterations of experience upon the American land and in Europe before that, that had been owned and banked by. They say, according to some people, would say now that the Catholic Church, whether you know it or not, owns more real estate than almost anyone, anyhow, anywhere. The Catholic Church does to this day. That's not the least or the most of their scope of influence, but that's significant. Most of anything that would be owned by anything or anyone is exactly owned by the church. That's not necessarily in along political lines, just in terms of strict real estate. That's the case now, but that is the exact case as the real where the buck stops. For example, when you pay your taxes to a lot of people, they don't know what they're saying out their mouth a lot of times. When you say okay, when you say the letters okay, most people wouldn't know what you're saying when you say okay. Neither when you say M&Ms, neither when you say COVID, neither when you say IRS. These are significant things that are in your face, prominent, famous, influential things, yet you know nothing of what you're saying or hearing. So okay, according I googled this I fact checked this on Google. It was like a random post that gave rare insights, because I would quiz and enlighten some of my students as a bus driver, because you gain more traction with being interesting, enlightening, teachable, and friendly and humorous, spontaneous, than you do with strict authority as leading people goes of anything, including being a school bus driver. So I found out, and I taught them that when you say okay, that's referring to, in the Boston area, like around the 1830s, the young people would be cool and savvy in writing as they are now, like in letters then, and they would spell all correct with an O and with a K, to be clever. So when you're saying okay, you're saying all correct. So you know it by that, but you don't know what you're actually referring to with those letters. So you'd be a little bit you're a little bit you're you're a little arbitrary when you say okay, 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 guys, okay. Are you okay? You're being a little bit arbitrary when you actually don't know what those letters mean. Although you're sounding erudite and you understand yourself and educated. Um, I'm not saying I'm more or less educated than anyone. The only difference is that I've come across the teachings of Tashriq Bey, and he says that etymology is far more significant in terms of understanding erudition and being and having facility in communicating and in life than a person would generally appreciate. And that's why according to him, around the time of the early 20th century, there was a changing of the guard as education goes, as the Board of Education in the New York area, and a lot of the interests that would have sway on that, such as the Gates, the something Gates, T Gates, the actual one of the progenitors of a current famous person that influential person that bears that name. Some of these barons and tycoons that overhauled education in that time, the early 20th century, according to Tashik Bey, they watered it down and made it more of a function of herding and animal husbandry than strict erudition. And he showed on the actual more sophisticated than you would generally appreciate people of that time period. Like one example would be like to name 13 appropriate uses for a capital letter. Can you listen to the consist of 13 distinctions or appropriate uses for a capital letter in writing? I cannot without looking into that. And it doesn't stop there. I remember my grandmother was her penmanship was outstanding. The education was really was beyond the actual the of education, but some of the reality of education was you could say it was actually superior back then. And I read the works of Arthur Avalon, who was a Court of India, and I reference him a lot on this channel. And he was on the High Court of India by the early 20th century and had already studied at prestigious schools in England before matriculating, moving to India and studying there. But if you read his writing from the early 20th century, he uses the English language better than most people do now, and it's not necessarily outdated or redundant. He's using the modern lexicon. A lot of them, because a lot of it's interesting how times change. This is 2020, but the actual English language itself, it doesn't really move quickly, if anything, because some things are so our dealings with one another are so formalized and so vetted that I think we actually mature and evolve slowly as language goes, but also as maybe mores and relating to one another goes, if forward at all. I don't even know if we actually move forward as relating to one another goes, but the language is like that. Is that the language is somewhat, I think, stifled in its development, in that it hasn't changed in this many iterations, or not quickly, because a lot of our news are formal and rote, including he uses language so exquisitely and so accurately and so compelling, and that made me want to turn the video and start reading it. But it's because I think it's because actually the quality of education, both in Europe, but also not only Europe, but probably the United States too, it may have actually been superior in some respects than it had been after the change of the guard, like with the Board of Education in the early 20th century, according to Tashriq Bey. Of education then and now, but especially even since the civil rights movement had been diluting and removing the etymology. Because if you recall, when you're young in school, you probably learned the parts of speech in early elementary and spelling, but what would go with that would be etymology. And the etymology itself, it actually reveals the real underpinning history and realities of a lot of fields: civics, science, language itself, history, some of the relics of history, the vestiges, the vestibular parts of our history that have been rewritten, underwritten, and off-written, whatnot, are still present within some of the very etymology, if you would appreciate etymology, and it comes out sometimes. But also it's part of it, can be seen in these some of these acronyms in words that function as actual words that are spelled as acronyms, that we don't know what we're saying, as certain as we are in life. We don't know a lot of what we're saying. So okay would mean all correct. M&M's simply means Mars and Murray's, like the candy company. I learned that on the same Google post about that. And then like COVID, according to Tashik Bey, refers to certificate of vaccination ID. And then the other one I wanted to reference was COVID, okay, M&M, and what was I was just reaching for another one. Dang, I forgot the actual other word I was about to reference there. But I just wanted to say that the etymology, the trades, and the civics are deprived of a lot of the education, and it compounds and it impacts a lot of things. But uh, um, But I think that I was reaching for something with dang, I lost that. There's the more significant one I wanted to spell out of those etymology, those acronym like words. I lost the train of thought with that. But what I was saying is that a lot of things have not changed as much as we would think that they would, and and so like with the I think that I was talking about the church and the church and its hold on real estate, and then also the hold on the and the politics is that it's simply the church. They own things, they run things, but um they've changed with the times, and such as that the medical professionals are believable and have as much sway as the church of old, but then also they have a proxy and presence in people's lives. People are quick and soon to divulge their goings on and their very thoughts to medical personnel, legal personnel, as in lawyers, and financial personnel, as in accountants, and so IRS. That's what I was gonna say. So IRS, according to Tashik Bey, that refers to the Inquisition Revenue Service, and that has to do with the church. And then also you have like the Bar Association, that refers to British Accredited Registry, such that both England, something on Fleet Street, England, and there's an overlap and coalescing between the business of England that takes place there, and then the Catholic Church, the church. From there, you have that's the underpinning. The finances is, if things start and end with the finance, that's the underpinning of all of the activity that's permitted to go on Earth. That is the economics, and anything that anyone would do, furtive or blatant, is a function of the economics, and it's ran by that. So when you're saying U.S., also you're referring to unum sanctum, according to Tashrik Bey, and that's the actual Canada. You think Canada to be a country, but according to him, is actually a province, a subsidiary, and a satellite of the United States, actually, which is a corporation and an occupation upon occupied land that has yet to be acquired legally, and has yet to operate legally. That is under the auspices of what goes on Fleet Street, England, and that's all owned by the church. I'm not here to change that or argue that, but that's what's going on. And so a lot of times people don't know what they're saying out their mouth. But then also the church as it functions. So what I'm saying is now, but also even especially at the time of the sexual revolution and prior to that, a person can essentially come into a church and divulge to a. I don't know. I know I worked as a healthcare professional that served vulnerable populations, as in children, vulnerable adults, and elderly people, and vulnerable elderly people. And from that standpoint, a mandated reporter is that if something's flagrant or puts people, any of those designations, classes of people in jeopardy, you'd be mandated and compelled to divulge what you know. Otherwise, you would be somewhat held accountable and culprit as a mandated reporter. But I don't know how that actually works with religious clergy. There'd be some distinction about, and also healthcare, and legal and financial people. There's probably some discrepancy. They have an interest in they would be it would be it would be a matter of course for them to be in to have knowledge and access to the privy goings on, that is the statements of people, your verbal statements to a religious professional, to a medical professional, especially if there's a tandem set of professionals, which is significant. But just a professional at all, whatever you would divulge out your mouth, for intents purposes, is an actual binding statement. Just no different than that you would apply to a legal document or a financial document. Your actual verbal statements to religious clergy, I'm sorry, to a medical professional, is binding. And in broad society, your statements in front of other what would you would call adults, for lack of a better word, two or more, that can be binding too, because two or more establishes like to that point. Like I'm but you could go. So nowadays, right, like heaven forbid someone had blood on their hands, right? They were in a car accident that they were absolved of, or they were some form of clemency from practical or actual under the auspices of a court. They actually had blood on their hands, right? So they had maimed someone, being reckless with the car. They didn't hide anything, but they're scot free somehow. Or heaven forbid they were secretive, but they're also scot-free right there. I don't know what the distinction would be like a religious clergy learning about that, such as when you talk to a priest of old, to because in sort of expressing things are part of getting them off of our chest. So there would be a real significance about being able to, in the reality of confessing to a clergy member, because it's been appreciated that human beings, like all of life itself, but human beings are fundamentally honest. We we're born naughty and we're taught to be good, but we're also born honest and we're taught to be bad. I'm not saying naughty is bad, but dishonest is bad, and so we more so learn dishonesty. You could say that the fall of man, the original sin, was probably likely, if anything, dishonesty. It wasn't only that I'm not stating the biblical allegories as verbatim as true or not true, but I'm saying as the story of the original sin would go, is that I imagine that it's not only the breach of judgment, the breach of rules, breaching the rule that was the edict, but it was the hiding. That's what the original sin was. It wasn't to become naked or discover being naked, but to hide being naked, because that's shame there, and from shame that introduces leverage. So what did the wicked one that go on their belly, what did they accomplish by convincing one to convince the other to fall together? To what they would have accomplished would be leverage, because them two made that mistake. The greatest already knows all that is in your heart before you would get around to make mistakes. So you can say the greatest already would know that. But what it afforded to the would go on their belly is the leverage. You two did that, but you're also ashamed of that. But I know that you did that. So that's leverage power. There's no manner of mayhem, mischief, and real, actual, true evil that can't be played out by obtaining that form of leverage. So that's really actually what wicked is. The soft point of the soft is a hardened aspect of most things. Hard skill, soft skill, like manipulating something like say a bus or a vehicle. That's a hard skill. Managing people, diplomacy, leadership, that skirts between hard and soft skill. But as it's strictly social, that's a soft skill. As evil goes, the soft point, the vulnerable point, the extended point, the subject point of evil would be shame, and then the active point, the malevolent point, the potent point of evil would be coercion. That is leverage, plain and simple. It doesn't matter if the leverage is upon ethical lines, financial lines, physical lines, anything that would make a person compelled or influenced to do something against their better judgment and against their true intention and interest and desire. It is evil power excellence, because that's breaching what even the greatest would not breach, is a person's free will. But I think that, but whether a person, so even if a person were to go to a religious clergy and confess bloody murder, like and say that person was back from deployment and they just got blood on their hands, heaven forbid, on a deployment, or saw or lost someone on deployment, um, they can come to a religious clergy, and that clergy won't bat an eye at that. They won't look at them any different. Sometimes you have, like, in different services, you have people that have been they have served time, they have not, they have different things on their conscience. But what I'm saying is that human beings are honest in the first place. So if a person is hiding anything for any reason, that's going to weigh on a person, and it's going to stifle a person from expressing themselves fully. You cannot enjoy life fully without expressing yourself fully, or having the prerogative to express yourself and not express yourself as it would help you to express yourself. So anyone that would get away with anything or do anything but not be clear about it, but have to be ashamed of it, that's heavy binding. And so that is one thing that the church afforded in the past, would be like they call absolving of it, but I'd say more is be reckoning of it, is coming out with something. And so I'm not knocking that, but what I'm saying is that from then and now, a lot of people, you can go around a church, you've done anything, you thought about anything, you've gotten away with something, you didn't get away with something, but you got it on your chest and you're expressing it. The church won't look at you as any different, because you're still under the church. But if you were to walk around there like your stuff don't stink, that is, like, because there's very few things that I don't. So they say that in the Bible, the greatest will forgive of a multitude of sins, and cast into a sea of forgetfulness, and will absolve many things. But what is not tolerated is to be righteous in one's own estimation. That is unsufferable to people that are church minded, and potentially to what's described in the church, is that to be self-righteous. Although I think that a lot of people who are reared around the church, which is all society, as the value goes, in the thought process goes, um it's at the status quo. Rather than, so what's interchangeable with church, and what I'm using as church in the modern era, is status quo. The status quo has replaced, but actually functions exactly the same as the church, and still pays fealty that is financed back to the church. So the status quo actually is the church. So when you see a lot of people, they can ascribe to, they can partake of any lifestyle, they can partake of nearly any faith, anything that they would have to do or be, but where the buck stops is actually the status quo. That is the value judgments, the prevailing value judgments. That is what sin isn't now, and I think it was then too, because like I said, you can come to the church, you're idolater, an alcoholic, an adulterer, a murderer, anything that you can imagine is nearly doesn't actually really matter. Because I listened to one pastor, he was from Chicago, he was a famous pastor in Chicago, and he had a sermon at a woman's house that I was taking care of some years back as a PCA, and he was saying, if you think of the worst thing that you've ever done, or you can think of, to the greatest in this life that has fashioned this life, what you can imagine a human being doing, right or wrong, it may stack up to, in your estimation, that the height of the Sears Tower. That was like the tallest building in Chicago at that time, and one of them in the world then and now. But as much as you can imagine the wickedness of doings is as high as the skyscraper, the mercy, the forgiveness, the compassion, the understanding, the greatness, the bounty, the healing, the transcendence of this reality is as much distance as the top of that wrongdoing to the nearest star at least, or planet at least. That's like almost like nothing. But that's actually the standpoint of the church, is that anything you would do or get to do, blah blah blah, it doesn't mean nothing. But if you were to walk around there and act like your stuff doesn't count, that your stuff doesn't, like your stuff, like you're righteous, like you're actually truly righteous. Holy means set apart. So you're so holy as to be. So if you're holy, you got to be next to somebody, something. If you're away from all the riffraff, whatnot, are you next? Do you understand yourself as being next to something great, right? Most people cannot abide. Most people cannot abide and stay healthy outside of relationships, right? Outside of loving, reciprocity, reciprocal, understanding, sharing, learning, cooperation. What's the word I'm looking for? Like when you meet in the middle, cooperation and compromise, right? You can't be healthy like that, right? Because even if you were making money like that, yeah, but you want to come back and spend that money around people, or impress people, or communicate with people, have something to do with people, right? I can say on this video that I ain't been in relationships since relationships, right? I ain't been having nobody having my back. I haven't been looking at me. I haven't been whispering, speaking nothing. I haven't had nobody making this and that. But what I look like at now, I might be getting on my high horse, like, hey, look at me, this and that. But I think that I'm not the worst looking person, right? And I also don't got the worst things going on for me, because until recently, like this year, right, I had a damn motorcycle, a damn Harley, of late model on my hands. I would have had a sturdy vehicle, older year than that, but less than 70,000 miles. If it hadn't been shipped bogus, I would have had that. I had a 1099, work your own work day or night, because you still have people ordering all through the night at certain restaurants. Set your own schedule, day or night, work off commission, and get paid like that when you close the app like that, right? I had that going on at the same time, sometimes different, but also at the same time, as being a CDL, school bus, which is my vocation, because I loved it. It didn't feel like work. I didn't mind waking up at 3 a.m. to take a shower, to get out of bed, leave the house at 3:30, to commute 30 minutes, to start the buses at 4 on your frigid cold days, to have the whole damn base going up, good to go by 5:15, take me a little break, start my day at 6:15, get 3 tiers of 70 children to school in the morning, take a break, take some more pre-K or field trip, or spend some time in my hand learning, reading during the midday, do the same thing in the afternoon, then go to a high school, chill, have some more time on my hands while I'm getting paid like that, and take some cool high schoolers home like that from whatever sturdy things they had to do like that, and get paid like that. That's what I had going on, right? And then also, and I appear like this now at 4-0. Now I'm not trying to flex like that, but you would have to have something going for you, right? You'd have to be some. If it hadn't been Romeo and Juliet, if it hadn't been a relation, if it hadn't been a friend, if it hadn't been some, had to be. Can you really get onto that? Can you really get on like that? Can you really be? And my own apartment, mind you, my own apartment in a well-to-do area in the city where I'm at. It's a city of old wealth. It's a neighborhood of old wealth. I was good to go like that in my own stuff like that, right? I had a little bit. It was some turbulence like around people in my life that were making it hard for themselves and thereby people that have anything to do with them, right? But I had that much going for myself and nobody having my back, nobody helped, nobody believing in your boy, right? If anything, everybody not believing in your boy had to go. As I had this sturdy track record, this long and this line of work, that's a lot thankless, but it's also helpful. And I have professionals see me do that. Professional help me get on with that. But everybody trying to make it hard for your boy, right? Everybody, any walk of life, don't believe in your boy. Don't, but your boy still did that like that, right? So do you believe that this type of tough on top, while having the worst type of whatever scheduling you can give a person by somehow appreciating how they're like now, they're calling your boy sick while he's not coughing, right? No damn cough, no nothing. Can hold your best with the best of them, can outwork the best of them, is more kind, more friendly, use less of profanity, less of something than the best of them, right? All that, right? But you're working against your boy, and your boy still got on to all that, but still also appear like something, right? Would you not have to have somebody in your corner? Would you not have to have some form of love? Can you do that? Can you do any of that stuff without love, really? But if there's nobody with you, right? Were you not close to or next to someone somehow, right? But if you go around a church talking like that, man, they'll run you up out of there. They'll fillet you, like they'll fillet your boy like that, right? So what I'm saying is that in the church, but also in reality, the what is worse than blasphemy is to be content, is to understand oneself, to present oneself as understanding oneself as that was what pissed me off. I'm okay, man. I don't need your church. I don't need your book. I don't need nothing, man. I'm just cool. I don't really. I'm not. I think I'm all right, man. I think the church would say no. If you understand yourself that way, then you are as filthy treats you. So I'm saying that what church was about, right? The European culture, the European culture, it is viable, formidable, impressive, dauntless, undefeated, near about because in values, but also no one is bigger than the group. So the church of old, it represented the highest value and cohesion and subjection to the highest value. What is the highest value in in feudal Europe, in puritanical United States, and in current United States? What is the highest value? I'm saying it's not love because back in the day they'll kill somebody. They'll damn near run a woman and her baby out of a family, out of a community, if it had been outside of the auspices of the church. So I'm saying children come from love, right? Making love, right? So a child is love. A child comes from love. But you would assume estrange a child, call that child a bastard. The word bastard used to hit harder than it does now. Even you bastardize a child, and also mock, ridicule, and dismiss a woman, a mother, out of a household, out of a community, out of the support of a community that is shelter of that in hard times, harsh conditions, this many centuries. So the highest condition is not love. The highest value is not. I'm saying this right now, in this society and in the church, and even in the realities that come from the book, the great book. The highest value, what we're worshiping, what we're prostrating, is not love, because that's not love what you do to a woman and a child out of wedlock. But that's also not love what happens on so many levels